Okay, so it's Tuesday, August 2nd. And what I'm going to highlight today isn't talking about military fighting. There wasn't a lot of movement today. Um, but I want to highlight like the propaganda war and how things are actually working in the information space. So here, the first article, the SBU liquidates a million-strong bot farm, destabilizing the situation in Ukraine. So these are Russian hackers spreading disinformation. I've talked to the professor at Clemson, who is the foremost expert on Russian disinformation, bot farm kind of stuff. It's a real thing. Now, the SBU in Ukraine claims that they have um, captured or destroyed this one bot farm with 400,000 users and seized their equipment, their software, their hardware, their SIM cards, all that. But that's only one. And this is ongoing, and it's been ongoing for a long time. I'm not saying I'm not showing this to show you just how much they've done. Like, look at what the SBU has done. It's not that. It's that this is going on, and more is going on, and you need to be understand it. I'm amazed at how many Russian trolls comment on my videos, and I just don't interact with them because it's silly to interact with them. Okay, Zelensky replaces the leadership of SBU's Department of Information, and this is kind of related, the head of Information and Analytical Support in the Security Service. Let's go on to the next. The RADA officials urge the world to contribute to the objective investigation of a terrorist attack in Olivinka. Okay, so now a few days ago, a prison was either bombed or hit with a missile or blown up from the inside or something. And it's a big thing. 53 Ukrainian prisoners are killed. A few guards are theoretically injured. We just don't know yet. Russia has said, sure, we want an investigation, but hasn't let anyone in. The Ukrainians now have since the beginning said that they want to have an investigation. Here, the chairman of the Verkhovna Rada, that is their parliament, says, on behalf of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, we appeal to the world community, international organizations, governments, and parliaments of foreign states to call to strongly condemn this gross violation of international human law by the Russian Federation, take all possible measures to conduct an impartial, objective investigation. Now, if they did it, why are they calling for an international investigation? Now, yesterday, the um, ISW, the Institute for the Study of War, said, yeah, it seems pretty conclusive from the outside looking in that the Russians did this, and they gave some reasons why. You can look that up. But okay, let me go on to a few other things, and I'll come back to that about the prisoners of war being hurt. Okay, Russian soldiers have accused their commanders of jailing them in eastern Ukraine for refusing to take part in the war. This is from The Guardian. Here's another Guardian article. And so about 140 soldiers, they've refused. Now, these soldiers can refuse because it's not a war, it's a special military operation. So one soldier said, as a result for what I believe were tactical and strategic mistakes made by my commanders and their total disregard for human life, I made a decision not to continue in the military operation. Okay, so they're jailed, and a number of Russian soldiers have done this. The Kremlin has not formally declared a war, meaning contract soldiers can opt against fighting and face dismissal, but they can't be prosecuted or jailed. So they're being prosecuted and jailed, and they're not allowed to legally because it's not actually a war. I just thought that was interesting. Now, if you break the law there, where else are you breaking the rules of war? Okay, Biden and Zelensky are directly now. This last article was The Guardian. This article is Pravda. Biden and Zelensky are directly responsible for killing 50 Ukrainian POWs. This is Lieutenant General Igor Konashenikov. He's an official representative of the Defense Ministry, and he's blaming what Biden? Why? All missile strikes conducted by Kyiv were carried out with the approval from the White House. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily true, but he's going on and echoing the claim that the strike was conducted with the use of American HIMARS, multiple rocket launching systems, and this does not look like what has been going on. Here's RT again. Who killed the POWs at Zakharova? All signs on the ground point to a Ukrainian attack. Now, if you are a Canadian independent journalist, as this person is, if you are not getting published anywhere and you just spout the Russian party line, you'll get published in RT. RT is Russia Today. It's Russian television. If you want to watch the TV version, you can watch it live here. Okay, So she says this, even the Ukrainian side killed its own soldiers. Even if they killed their own soldiers, it was Russians who took care to identify the remains. Oh, that's very kind of them. The next morning, I went around the nets to document the extremely dangerous pedal mines that Ukraine had dropped on the city, not related. And here's her Twitter feed where she's showing these fragments that she has found. Well, the Russians could have placed fragments before blowing stuff up. I mean, that's not outside of reality or the possibilities. DPR officials say it was carried out using American-supplied HIMARS. Okay, they've said this, but there's not been real evidence, and the evidence that they have shown was the exact same evidence that they showed in a different place, and it's like they think we're stupid. Injuring at least 8 employees and over 70 POWs held there. If HIMARS or high mobility artillery rocket system were indeed the source of the destruction and death, then it's almost certain it was Ukraine who bombed the prison, given that Kyiv had the coordinates and is the only side in the conflict that possesses such weapons. But if they bombed internally somehow, and we haven't gotten to an investigation yet, then that wouldn't necessarily be so. Even the Pentagon admits it's possible. Of course, it's possible. Characterizing the strike as unintentional. Okay, for Ukraine, on the other hand, these POWs present a liability in that they could testify to the alleged war crimes they committed against Donbas civilians. I don't think that's really the issue here. Ukraine has made a litany of claims meant to incriminate Russia through the current conflict. The Bucha massacre, that was legitimate, and Russia denied it. The strike on Mariupol Maternity Hospital, well, it's both questionable about that, but the Russians destroyed Mariupol, including Maternity Hospital. The Ghost of Kiev hoax. The Ghost of Kiev was um, legend or a rumor about this mysterious plane that was shooting down all these Russian planes. It was propaganda from the Ukrainian side, which probably wasn't the best thing because if you know that they're lying about this thing, then they could be lying about other things. But this is the only isolated incident that I know of where the Ukrainians were making up propaganda in this regard. Supposed mass graves of civilians? No, there were mass graves of civilians all over. It's been documented by Western journalists who aren't agreeing or getting together with each other. They're independently agreeing with this or finding this. Outlandish false allegations of Russian soldiers committing sexual crimes. No, there are legitimate sexual crimes by Russian soldiers verified by independent journalists, which even saw the former Ukrainian parliamentary commissioner for human rights fired by Kyiv's own parliament. But this was not fired for that reason. It was fired because maybe you're a little bit too cozy with the Russians. So you got to. Okay, so the problem with this article is that this is what Russians are reading, or this is the propaganda Russians are reading, and then it's picked up by Islamic and Indian and other, Iranian and Syrian news outlets, and that's what they're hearing. All these things. Um, let me finish this. The captured Azov Nazis were taken to Zakharova detention center in late May. While prisoner exchanges between Ukraine and Russia have included Azov fighters, there's a strong opposition to handing them back over to Kyiv, meaning there's no guarantees that they would be exchanged in the future, potentially making them a liability to Kyiv. On the 28th, the confession of an Azov member emerged, claiming that neo-Nazis in Kharkiv and Kyiv had direct orders from Zelensky's office to torture and murder Russian prisoners of war. Now, how they would have known that is a good question, but that even happened, I doubt. Direct orders to kill the enemy? Sure. Direct orders to murder Russian prisoners of war? We have no independent verified anything about that. So, again, what we know is that Russia makes up crap. They just do. And you can see it. There's a pattern that emerges again and again. And I don't see any reason why this would be any different. And so that's what they say here. Last thing, last but not least, just 2 days before the Yanukovych strike, the U.S. Senate passed a resolution urging the State Department to recognize Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. By perpetrating an attack blaming it on Moscow, Kyiv could be aiming to push that decision through, even though a State Department is reportedly reluctant. Okay, now she could be right, but I doubt it. And here's why I doubt it. Because this would be a crazy gamble for the Ukrainians to do something like this, to lose the support of the West over something like this. On the other hand, the Russians have a track record of whenever there's a big event about to happen or a big meeting, or so like the signing of the grain agreement, 12 hours later they bomb Odessa. While Zelensky speaking at The Hague, they bomb civilian send missile strikes on civilian targets. Or while the G7's meeting, they bomb another civilian target to make a so the Russians actually have a pattern, a track record of doing this kind of thing. So I don't see that Kyiv would roll the dice on that, and I do see that the Russians have a pattern on this. Okay, last thing, this is Maria Zakharova. She's the foreign ministry spokeswoman who said that essentially if Washington is going to declare that that the Russians are a state sponsor of terrorism, we're going to break off international relations. Such an application of their own legislation, of United States legislation, contrary to international law. It's not contrary to international law, by the way. We've very clearly defined what a state sponsor of terrorism is. May be seen by senators and congressmen as a terrible punishment that can force Russia to live in accordance with the rules-based world order invented by the United States. Actually, it's not invented by the United States, but we do champion it because we don't want situations to happen like happening in Ukraine, because might otherwise is all that you have left to make right. You don't have law. Naive. At the same time, it is forgotten that any action gives rise to opposition, and the logical result is such a step that there may be a break in diplomatic relations. That's, we're going to take our ball and go home. After which, Washington risks finally the crossing the point of no return with the ensuing consequences, which is probably a veiled threat toward nuclear or something, but that's it. If Washington decides to go to a complete stop of interaction with Moscow, we will get over it, she stressed. Okay, she lies all the time, and I can point to example after example. If you just go and watch back episodes, I do these daily updates every day. You will see that she and Lavrov and Medvedev, and they lie and lie, and they don't even try to give any evidence anymore. They've stopped even doing that. So I don't trust it any further than I can throw them. However, what's important, and this is my thesis, there's an information war going on just as important as the hot war, the kinetic war, the fighting on the ground, and you need to be aware of that. And so when you see videos like this, what you'll see is that there's going to be a lot of Russian trolls, and I bet you some of these are bots, like the ones that they were talking about here in this earlier article, the Russian bots. I believe that there's a lot of that going on, and I'm not spreading stuff. Look, I'm triangulating. Here's Interfax, here's The Guardian, here's Pravda, here's RT. I'm trying to explain and show you things from multiple angles, and you are informed and you understand what's going on the ground in Ukraine. Thank you for your time. If you're still listening to this, please subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.